Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of City Hall Live. I'm Darrell Justin Finizio, Mayor of the City of New London, and happy to be welcoming you back to the program. I first of all, this week, am able to repair my mistake from last week where I didn't have enough time to get to the Bean and Leaf. So I can thank Casey and Laura Nadelberg for helping me get my Earl Grey tea tonight. And I want to say a special word of thanks to Laura Nadelberg, who is one of the best cooks in New London, one of the absolute best, who made 1,000 brownies tonight for the DTC headquarters on Bank Street for Food Stroll. I know a lot of the candidates are down there meeting and greeting everyone. I was there earlier, and I have to say that this is a tremendous night in downtown New London. So I don't know how many calls I'll get, because I think everybody in town is somewhere on Bank or State Street or in and around the downtown area. It was amazing to see the number of people that came to New London from all over, and you could see from the license plates people from as far away as New York, obviously Rhode Island, a lot of Connecticut, but also Massachusetts. And talking to the people on the street, the buzz that I was hearing was, I've read about New London in the Hartford Courant, the Providence Journal. I heard about you from a friend who visited over the summer, and I had to come check out New London, and it's wonderful, and I can't believe I didn't know New London was here. I can't believe I didn't know so many great things were happening in the city. So it's a great, vibrant night downtown. Hopefully it's a successful event for New London Main Street. I know they've sold out of buttons, and it should be a great night, as always, for all of our downtown businesses, particularly our restaurants. It's a great event, so I hope that you're not watching the show. I hope you're out there enjoying the night. But if you are tuning in, I'll be very happy to take your calls. This program revolves around you. So whatever you want to talk about, whatever is upsetting you that's going on in the city, things you think I should know about what's going on in the city, or just answers to questions that you're looking for, I'm happy to help you with as well. And if I can't get you the answer tonight, if it's not something I know off the top of my head, I'll be happy to get an answer for you. And in that vein, I wanted to touch on a couple things that came up last week. The first is that a gentleman called in to mention that the entrance to Bates Woods was overgrown and that he was upset about the condition of it. And I knew it was on our work order list, but I did check into it, and indeed it was cleaned up. It was cleaned up yesterday. The crews did get to it. So if you drive by now, you should see that we have gotten to that project. Also, a couple people brought up to me, both on the show but also in emails that I received at the office, about lights that were out on Bank Street. There were two in particular, one near Mambo's and one a little bit closer to the monument on Parade Plaza. Both of those have also been fixed. The other update that I do get a lot of questions on is the animal shelter that was damaged during Hurricane Sandy. Obviously, we had to wait a long time for those funds to come in. We've been relying on regional shelters to provide for our animal needs. This has not been an adequate solution. It's been the only one we had available to us, but there isn't as much space at these other shelters, and the time in which the animals have to be adopted is very short. So we've obviously wanted to get our own animal shelter back up and running. We got the funds over the summer. But we weren't able to assign our crews to the facility in Bates Woods because they were working so hard on getting the schools up and running for the opening of the school year. That work being completed, they moved over to the shelter, and we were scheduled to do a walkthrough today with the New London Day to show the progress so that everyone could see. They were going to bring their videographers, but the day had to cancel. Something came up for them. So hopefully we'll get to that next week so everyone can see where we're at. But the animal shelter is scheduled to be completed and reopened by Thanksgiving. So that's the target, and I'll keep everyone up to date. And we continue to work on a regional animal shelter. We're looking at land up by Lake Conomic, our main reservoir for our water supply system. There is land across the highway there that is owned by the City of New London, where several regional communities could potentially partner on a regional animal shelter using our existing animal shelters as a backup. And this could really help to get all of the animals who come into our system adopted before any of them would need to be euthanized, and that would certainly be a great goal for us to have. My hometown, the town of Westerly, Rhode Island, when I was involved in public service over there, one of the things that I did was help Larry Hirsch, who was the former owner of Westerly Jewelry, with a group called SUFA, or Stand Up for Animals. And we raised funds. When I was on the council there, we appropriated bonding funds as well to finish the project to complete a no-kill regional animal shelter in that town. And it's a great facility, and anyone who has the opportunity to go over there and see it for yourselves, it's wonderful. So I'd love to see a good regional animal shelter here in southeastern Connecticut. And of course, we want our own shelter back up and operating as soon as possible. And even when a regional shelter is built, we would keep that as a backup. So that is on the way, and hopefully will be completed soon. Also last week, I know I spoke extensively about the process with the Lighthouse Inn. That is continuing to move forward on the timeline that I explained. This Friday is the sale, the tax sale for the personal property associated with the building. And I did speak to Lee Howard from the Day today and reiterated the point that I made last week, that the reason why we are handling all of these different legalities with the building is so that everything's free and clear. We resolved the tax sale on the building and land itself. Then we shortened the time for the prior owner to come in and pay and resolve the issue to 60 days from 6 months, closed on the deed. Now we're cleaning up the vegetation. We're going to do the patchwork on the building, cleaning of the building, and now we're settling the personal property. There's also a water bill on the property and a beach dues bill on the property that we're trying to consolidate so that when someone purchases the property, all of these various different legal issues that are outstanding are resolved, the building's in good condition, and then we'd allow the different groups to do walkthroughs, come back with their own engineers and inspectors to do secondary walkthroughs if they're very serious developers, and then hopefully have a standard development package, including abatements, so that no matter who bids on it, the highest bid would get it, and everybody in the community and all the developers that have expressed interest in the property would know that this has been a completely public, transparent process, and that everybody got exactly the same deal, that there was no backroom deal, no special deal, nobody with any special connection over anyone else. That's certainly been my goal from the very beginning of the process, and obviously we're trying to move the entire process along as quickly as possible because we want to make sure that this property is secured, which we're doing now, and that it gets into the hands of a responsible developer as soon as possible so that no real damage occurs to the building. We've been very, very fortunate that in the approximate 6-7 years that it's been abandoned, serious damage has not yet occurred to the property. So if a developer takes ownership now, especially with what the city's doing to get it ready for sale, the building can still be saved, and that's obviously our goal. So you should see that article in tomorrow, and as updates happen, we'll obviously continue to keep the public fully informed, and of course you can always contact my office if you want further information on where we stand with that project. I also did get a number of questions, I continue to get them, about the Montauk Avenue paving project and when it will be completed. The answer I continually receive is soon. I know they're doing the final work on the project, and when it's completed, I think it will be an excellent improvement to that main artery in the city. As improvements have been made on the north end of Bank Street or Boston Post Road, on the entry from Waterford into New London, that is the best I have ever seen it look in my lifetime of coming to New London and living in New London. So that's a tremendous improvement. Jefferson as well has been improved, and this is the kind of work, this sidewalk improvement, curbing improvement, drainage improvement, water and sewer improvement, road repaving, that we really need to do throughout the city of New London. Several of these projects ongoing now are state projects, but we also have municipal projects going, and the administration has submitted twice now a 5-year capital plan that will address all of the remaining infrastructure needs in the city. So hopefully the council will act on that in the coming years, and we'll be able to get the infrastructure of New London up to speed, which is essential to build a foundation for economic growth. So I'm very, very grateful to see the progress that's been made. There's a lot more to do. I know many people call and say, when's my street getting done? You know, we've been waiting for sidewalks for 30 years, 40 years. What I would suggest is that you can go to my Facebook page, or you can contact me through the city website or through my city email. We actually have this capital plan outlined through our Public Works Department, and you can see it for yourself. So you can see where your street is on that list, whether it's in year 2, year 3, year 4, or year 5. But that list was formulated based upon engineering design studies. So again, no street is being favored because of who lives there or who doesn't live there, or whether the street is in an economically advantaged neighborhood or a economically disadvantaged neighborhood. That's not the issue. The issue is, where is the need the greatest, and that's where we're going first. We're going off of what the civil engineers have said. It's a very logical, rational pattern of how we're addressing these issues, and I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to work through it in a relatively short amount of time. So we're about 11 minutes in, and I haven't seen a call yet. I know that Dennis from New London is downtown campaigning, so I know he's not calling in. I already saw Clark Vanderlyke downtown, so I know he's not calling in. But if anybody else out there has any questions for the city or concerns about the city, I'd be happy to take the calls. Otherwise, I'll be happy to discuss any other issues that come to my mind. But they may or may not be the issues that you would rather hear about. But I'll certainly discuss those other things that are happening in the city and in the region. This morning, there was a meeting of the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments, or SCOG. The guest speaker was Lieutenant Governor Nancy Wyman. She spoke about trying to reduce state bureaucracy relative to municipalities applying for particular state funds and getting answers from state agencies to questions that concern municipalities. And I think it was a very good, fluid exchange between the municipal heads of government and the Lieutenant Governor. I thank her for coming. And I would also thank the Governor, Governor Malloy, who came to New London today. I was just with him at the opening of the new Homeless Hospitality Center at the former Greek Orthodox Church near Hodges Square. The facility is excellent, and I'll be happy to talk about that in a minute, but we do have our first caller, so I'll hold and take the first call. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Lorraine Hester calling.
Hello, Lorraine.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question about repair to Gallows Lane, which connects Bloomingdale and Old Norwich Road behind Connecticut College.
Right behind the Arboretum, yeah.
The New London side is terrible, and it borders Waterford. The Waterford side is perfect. When will the New London side get done? A lot of people use this road to go to ShopRite, school buses, Connecticut College, the Coast Guard, hikers, joggers, walkers. Any answers on that?
Yes, what I can say is that if you want to email me, because I don't know off the top of my head what year we have that street in the capital plan, because obviously there are many, many streets in the city of New London, and I'm not sure exactly which year which one has been placed in by the engineering studies. If you email me at City Hall, I can get you an answer directly, but I'm also taking a note of it. So when I'm on next week, just like I did with the gentleman who called last week about Bates Woods, I'll check into this and get you an answer on the show. But if you want a quicker answer, you can also email me at City Hall, and I can look at the capital plan and tell you what year that road is slated for repair. Are you still there?
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. When will it be done?
Hello, I'm still here.
Yes. So did you have another question?
No, that was my only question. Thank you.
All right, I'll get you an answer, or if you email me, I can get you an answer a little quicker. Otherwise, tune in next week, and hopefully I'll have an answer for you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
What I will say is that a lot of the smaller streets and side streets are obviously going to be in later years because the first priority will be getting the main arteries of the city completed. So that's why repaving is going on and curbing is going on Jefferson, on Boston Post, on Montauk, etc. Those were all year one projects. The other streets will come after that, and believe me, there are many throughout the city that are in desperate need of repair, particularly sidewalks. One of the things that we really need to concentrate on in New London is making us a walkable city. We're such a small city with such dense population that really it behooves us to have the city be accessible to people who walk, also to mass transit, and to people who bike. So that's why in a lot of these repaving projects, they're putting in bike lanes, etc. This reduces costs to individual families. It also creates a better environmental impact for our entire city, and it's really just smart growth thinking in terms of how we do our infrastructure. So there are a lot of side streets that I've been on, particularly during my recent campaign when I was knocking doors, and I know there are a lot of candidates going out there knocking doors now, so hopefully they'll see it for themselves. The sidewalks are really in terrible condition, and particularly where there are steep hills, particularly where you have an elderly population, you know, this is a real danger for people. So getting this capital plan, you know, executed effectively and getting these improvements made, I think, will be a really good thing for the city as a whole. But going back to what I was saying earlier, earlier tonight, Governor Malloy came to New London to dedicate the new Homeless Hospitality Center. This is a wonderful community partnership, and it's an improvement over our existing way of handling homeless services in several ways. The first is that it's coordinated in terms of service need response. The Community Health Center, Alessandro Melendez Cooper, who's the executive director here in New London, has partnered with the Homeless Hospitality Center so that there will be health clinic services available at this center for people who are in indigent populations, homeless folks who come into the system here, that they get the medical needs attended to, because without that, looking for a job, getting housing, saving money is almost impossible if you have a severe medical need that's not being addressed. So the Visiting Nurses Association is partnering on this, the Community Health Center is partnering on this, and there are some facilities available in the new homeless center to serve that need, which I find to be very, very, very good news and very good coordination to have this as one-stop shopping for these various services. The other thing I will mention is that the volunteers there, the staff there, do a great job in getting people to set aside funds for saving for housing so that they can transition people from homelessness to housing quicker. That's very good planning. And also I was very impressed by the outpouring of support for this initiative from the Clergy Association of Greater New London, of New London County. Almost every single faith tradition was represented there today. There were over 20 ministers who were involved in the dedication ceremony from every different church throughout New London County, synagogue, mosque, Islamic center, you name it, were represented, and I think that that is a very, very, very good sign. I worked with this same group, this Clergy Association, during the gun buyback program that the city did, where both the New London County Bar Association and the Clergy Association raised $20,000 for a gun buyback that the city did last year. This is an amazing group, and having worked in other cities where there are diverse faith traditions, such as New York City or Providence, Rhode Island, it's truly remarkable, and I think we are truly lucky here in the city of New London and in New London County that all of these different ministers, pastors, rabbis work together this closely around these common social service needs, particularly as government does less, as state government constricts and state aid has constricted as it has in recent years, as the federal government goes through sequestration. which particularly is hitting social services very hard. It's hitting the poor disproportionately to the middle class or the wealthy, although it's hitting everyone throughout the economy. But in a place like New London, when the federal government and the state government do less, and when the city government is strapped as is, we need private community organizations to step forward to fill the void. And the Clergy Association of Greater New London County has done this to a great extent, and I'm very, 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 very pleased that we have them, and am thankful for all that they do. So that dedication was today. Also at today's earlier SCOG meeting, one of the items that came up, which was discussed at the previous month's SCOG meeting, is a new state law that has passed. This state law mandates that every municipality have a veterans liaison officer, someone who can coordinate with returning veterans to the community to help them connect with the services that they may need, or to get information about how to use their GI Bill, where to go if they're suffering from PTSD, right on down the line. I am very close to naming someone in the City of New London who will act as this designee. I do have someone who has been selected, but I'm waiting until we can get them fully set up and go through the initial training seminars to announce this publicly. But when the person is named, I think people will be very happy with the selection. It is a New Londoner who is a veteran of both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, who has extensive security training, and who has already been working informally with veterans throughout our community. And I think this will be a very good thing for New London to have this person in place. Part of the controversy in the law is that the statute requested, or mandated rather, that it be a city employee. Well, obviously the municipalities are all strapped, don't have lots of money to hire someone. New London is in the same boat. But the state has since come back, the Commissioner for Veterans Affairs has since come back and said, you can have a volunteer do this, and we're grateful to have this volunteer here in New London. We're setting them up with a city email, a city cell phone, and that's about it. The cost to the city is about $1, I think, for the phone, because under our cell phone contracts, we get so many that you can get one phone installed, you know, a simple phone for next to nothing. So that way there'll be a city phone number and a city email that someone will be able to reach out to at any time and get a hold of someone who is not just trained in helping to connect you with these veteran services, but also what was important to me was getting a recent veteran who's really dedicated to it and can talk to fellow veterans as someone who really actually knows what it's like to be going through that transition from military to civilian life. So I'm very hopeful to have that completed shortly, and this individual announced publicly soon, along with that phone number and email, so that veterans in our community can begin to use this resource. The City of New London has always been a military community. We are the home of the Coast Guard, as the home of the Coast Guard Academy and future home of the Coast Guard Museum, home of the Bark Eagle. We're home to Sub Base New London, and we have veterans of every branch of our armed forces living in New London. We thank them all for their service and respect what they've done and what they continue to deal with because of their service. And it's very, very important. It's particularly important to me because I'm only 36 years old, and many of my contemporaries served in the military, served overseas, and I've seen firsthand what these folks come home and have to deal with. So I think that the spirit of the state law was correct to make sure that there's a local point of contact, and certainly my desire was to make sure it was someone who wasn't just a trained bureaucrat, but was actually a veteran themselves. So I think this will be a good thing for the city. Also, until we get another call, I'll mention that when I last saw the television, it appeared that a financial deal had been reached, in Washington. I'm very hopeful for that. I spoke about it at the very end of my show last week, and I would reiterate again that I worked in the U.S. Senate as a page in 1994. I worked as an intern there in 1997. I've been involved working for the Rhode Island State Legislature, the New York City Council, serving on a town council in Westerly, working obviously as mayor of New London, being in government and public service now for about 20 years, and I've never seen anything like what we've been witnessing in Washington, D.C. The nation has been held captive by a very small and radical minority in one chamber of our federal legislature, to the point where we literally have come a matter of hours away from a federal default. Because we don't have a lot of callers, I'll go into a little depth on this with those of you who may be watching or may see this program later when it's posted online. Most of my friends, even my very well-educated friends who follow politics very frequently, don't fully understand what all this means. What does it mean if we don't raise our debt ceiling? Well, the international economy is based upon the idea that there is some common medium of exchange, that there's some basis for what all the global currencies can be based off of. There's some standard, like a gold standard, except it's not a gold standard. It's a monetary standard, it's a cash standard based upon, in effect, U.S. government securities, United States Treasury bonds. These are the full faith and credit bonds of the United States. The only thing that backs them up is effectively our credit history. And the credit history of the United States was established by John Adams when he got the first loan for the new government of the United States from the Netherlands, when he was our ambassador there after being ambassador to France before he became our first ambassador to England after the Revolutionary War. And why credit is so important is that we all use credit. Governments use it, businesses use it, individuals use it. If you want to go to a higher education institution, unless you have $200,000 in the bank, you're taking out student loans. If you want to buy a home, unless you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank, you're probably getting a mortgage. This is all credit. It's all debt. You don't want to get too much debt, and the nation has way too much debt. We need to balance our federal budget. We need to cut spending. We need to reduce our deficit. But you need to reduce your deficit responsibly over time. You don't just hit your credit limit and then say, sorry, we're done, and don't do any more financing. If you do that, you stop paying your bills, and then your credit score goes down. If you do that as an individual, if I say, boy, I'm having a tough time making my mortgage this month, I'm having a tough time paying all the bills, I could get a credit card or I could refinance my mortgage, but instead I'm not. I'm just going to stop paying it. Well, then they repossess your car, they repossess your house, you lose your credit score, etc. Well, that's what would happen to the whole federal government if we didn't raise the debt ceiling and just stop paying our bills. U.S. securities around the world would collapse. The dollar itself would be in jeopardy. Our entire economy is based upon our system, our ability to do financing, and our ability to always, as a nation, pay our bills. This is the first time that we've seriously run the risk of failing to do that. And should we actually go over that cliff, it would make the Great Depression look like a walk in the park. That's why people as conservative as Pat Robertson have gone on TV and said, this is absurd, it must be stopped. It's why former Speaker Newt Gingrich said, it must be stopped. This level of political rhetoric and this level of an ideological divide is seriously threatening not just our economy, but the entire global economy as well. So hopefully, this resolution that's reached in Washington today will not just be a temporary one, but that hopefully our leaders of both parties will know enough to take economic suicide off the table as an option when we debate the issues that we have to debate and compromise where we have to compromise. But the one thing we should all agree on is that we have to pay our bills and we have to keep the U.S. economy afloat. With that, I've got a call. I'll go to caller 1. Go ahead. You're on the air. Caller 1, you're all set.
Hello?
Hello.
I just want to say our debt is killing us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason they wanted to do this. Do you believe that?
Oh, absolutely. We have to pay down our debt and
yes,
balance
but
our budget.
they refuse to pay it.
I know. It's like if I've got my house and I've mortgaged it to the hilt. I owe more on my house than the house is worth. Well, I got a problem. I got to pay that debt down, which means I might need to get a second job. I might need to cut things out of my life, give up television, give up a cell phone to pay down that debt and make sure I keep making those payments. But what I can't do is just say, my debt's gotten too high, you know what, I'm not going to pay it. Because then they take my house away, my credit's shot, and I'll never get another house, I'll never get a car loan, etc. That's effectively where the federal government's got. What I think the Democrats and the Republicans need to do is conference and seriously debate, how do we pay this debt down? How do we cut spending? How do we raise revenues? How do we solve this problem?
Yeah,
but they need to have that debate, not say, we're not going to have that debate until we stop paying the bills, because by the time they get in the room to conference, there'll be no economy left to save.
They've been trying to do that for months and months and months, and they don't want to do it.
I know.
So then how can we solve the problem if they don't do it?
Well, I think ultimately the issue is going to have to be that those people who say, I will not compromise, which in my opinion, this is my opinion,
Obama.
is well, I see it as the Tea Party. Because Obama said, think about this, he'd cut Medicare, he'd cut Social Security. Now, I haven't heard a Democrat say that ever. I mean, just ever. You know, both he and some people on the right, like Rand Paul, have said, we'll cut military spending. Military spending is over a third of the federal budget. Our military is equal to the next 12 militaries in the world combined. That's excessive. We're going to have to find some things that are obsolete that we don't need to produce anymore, like stealth fighters. I mean, an F-22 Raptor costs $122 million to build. They've never been used. We haven't had a fighter-to-fighter conflict since the Korean War. There's no need to have these weapons, but we keep making them because someone somewhere has a job because we build these weapons.
Well, it all comes down to people are taken out of their jobs.
Of course. But unfortunately, if we don't find a way to transition slowly this spending down so that these contracts slowly constrict, that those people who are building those planes can be retrained to work somewhere else. I mean, you wouldn't want to just say overnight, we're cutting across the board, because then people are just put out in the cold. And that's what sequestration does. Sequestration just says, everybody's getting a cut. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you're just getting cut, and you're cut today, sorry, end of ball game. You know, there are much smarter ways to look at a budget and say, this stuff over here is really lean already and is very essential. This thing we're building over here is obsolete. Cut the obsolete thing, don't cut the essential thing. Sequestration just cuts everything by the same percentage. So it's not really a smart way to go about doing it. I think that Obama said repeatedly, and I think some of the Democrats in Congress have said, look, we'll put social programs on the table, we'll put food stamps on the table, stuff that most Democrats, myself included, would not be willing to cut. I don't think we should be cutting that. But listen, if we've got to get the country out of debt, I'll cut spending, but you've got to cut spending you like too. It's not just going to be cut the programs that the Democrats like, don't cut the programs the Republicans like, or just cut and don't raise taxes on anybody either. Because, you know, if you're in the upper income brackets, you got tax cuts under Reagan, you got tax cuts under George W. Bush. I mean, even the modest increases on some of the upper income earners that happened during the last fiscal cliff debacle still haven't put people who make more than $250,000 a year up to the tax rate they had in the 1990s. I mean, when everybody was getting rich, I mean, you know, the wealthy in America weren't doing bad in 1995. They were doing just fine. You know, I think their taxes can go up a little bit, and we can cut from all over the budget. But that's what we should be talking about. To say that, no, we're not going to cut any of those things. We're not going to raise any taxes on anybody ever, and we're going to stop paying our nation's bills. That's to me totally irrational. And I think even a lot of Republicans see that, and that's why the Republicans in the Senate, a lot of national Republican leaders and commentators have said, look, this is a bridge too far. And I think that the Republicans in the House, though, they're not really worried about that. They're worried about their re-elections. And I think a lot of them are worried that if they don't appear conservative enough, that a Republican who's more conservative than them will run against them in a primary, and then they'll lose their seat. But, you know, I think we need more people in politics who are less worried about losing their seat and more worried about doing what's right for the country.
That's the whole...
Yes?
Everybody's worried about being elected. That's the whole crux. That's what's wrong with this nation.
And you know what? The thing is that I think, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I think that I'd be more likely to vote for someone who I didn't agree with, but who gave me a straight-up answer and did what they said they were going to do, and put the interests of the country, the state, the city first.
No such animal.
Than I ever would. Well, I don't know if I agree with that. Like I said, I mentioned Rand Paul earlier. Rand Paul and I probably agree on very, very little. But I think he's a very genuine person, and I think he's willing to step beyond his partisanship and do what's right. I worked in the Senate. I knew a lot of people like that on both sides of the aisle. I remember Mark Hatfield of Oregon was one of them. He was a Republican, but he always put the interests of the country first. I think of Bob Dole. You know, Bob Dole, who was ardent conservative, but he would work with Democrats when it had to, you know, be for the good of the country. Orrin Hatch, who's in the Senate right now from Utah, is another one who I've seen work across party lines a lot. I think of Democrats like the late Paul Wellstone, who was a big liberal, you know, but he would work with Republicans, and he always said what he really believed. I think there are people out there. I think
well, look at Obama. He refused to work with Republicans.
Well, I don't think I think the only thing he refused to say was he wasn't going to go back and repeal the Affordable Care Act. But I don't see why any president would say, we had a debate, we passed a law, it went through Congress, I signed it, it went through the courts, the Supreme Court upheld it, and now we went through an election. This was a big issue in the election. You know, Mitt Romney said, if I win, I'm going to repeal it. Obama said, I'm going to keep it. Obama got reelected. I mean, why should we go back and rip up that law after we went through the process and had the law? I think you've got to let the law work for a while. I mean, Harry Reid sent a letter to John Boehner that I thought had something really important in it. He said, look, he said, I didn't agree with the Iraq war. I didn't agree with it. But once the decision was made to go, I supported the decision because the nation is now at war, and I never said we should stop paying the nation's bills because I disagree with the war. You know, to basically say, look, if I don't get my way on this issue that I've already lost on, we had the debate and I lost, we had an election and I lost, I'm in the minority, but if I don't get my way, I'll shut the whole government down and crash the economy. I just think that that's too much. I think it's fine to not like the Affordable Care Act. I myself don't particularly like it. It was a Republican plan. I mean, what a lot of people forget about Obamacare is that back in 1994, a basic version of Obamacare, a private insurance mandate, was put forward by John Chafee of Rhode Island, the Republican. It was the Republican alternative to the Clinton health plan. And then a very similar plan was instituted by Mitt Romney in Massachusetts at the state level. So this was a free market-based plan. Most Democrats like myself and most economists believe that universal single-payer health insurance is actually cheaper, doesn't hurt businesses, and works better. So that would have been the plan that I would have wanted. So I'm not even a huge fan of the Affordable Care Act. But I don't think you can go back after it's already said and done and say, if we don't go back and revisit this, we're going to crash the whole national economy. I just think that's irresponsible if you're really worried about putting the country first.
Well, they were trying to do something. They were trying to do something to stop the overspending. That's the only way they knew how to do it.
Well, I think that if the Republicans came to the table, because look, spending bills have to originate in the House. And I got another call, so after this I'll take the other call, but spending bills have to originate in the House. Republicans have the majority in the House. If you go to the Senate, the Democrats have the majority, but the Republicans can filibuster. You know, the Democrats don't have 60 votes. But Obama has the White House. So look, you're going to have to compromise. You're going to have to meet in the middle. And I think that there's potential to do that. And I think if the Republicans came to the table and said, okay, look, Affordable Care Act is done. It's on the books. It's over. But let's talk about all the rest of it. Let's talk about all the rest of our social spending. Let's talk about all the rest of our national budget. Let's talk about taxes. Let's talk about military. Let's talk about Social Security. Put it all on the table. I think that a compromise can be reached. I really, really do. I just don't think they have an interest in doing that because I think it's better for them to go out and yell about Obamacare because it fires up the voters in their districts and keeps them popular. But I don't think it's really moving the ball forward. And I think the people that are getting frustrated the most are actually Republicans. It's Republicans in the Senate, it's Republicans in the House leadership that are getting frustrated that they can't get their own members to want to negotiate because I think they've got kind of a no compromise attitude. And unfortunately, whether you like it or not, government, particularly a legislature, is about compromise. You know, the Democrat isn't going to get what he wants, the Republican isn't going to get everything he wants or she wants, but together they could meet in the middle. I've had to do that in New London with the city council. We've had to compromise. We've fought. Sometimes they've won an issue. Sometimes I've won an issue. But you hash it out and you move on. And if you lose an issue, you lose an issue. You accept that you lost, and you move on. You don't say, you know, hey, I lost, so I'm going to take all my balls and go home. I don't think that that's responsible government. And like I said, I've seen all sorts of fights in 20 years of being around politics. I've never seen something get to this level where people were willing to sink everything over one political debate. I've never seen it. But thank you very much for the call, and I'll go to caller 2. Go ahead, you're on the air. Hello? Do we still have you?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
How are you tonight?
I am doing well.
Very good. I have a question that I'm confused.
Okay.
Are the municipal workers exempt from Obama health care, or do they have to sign up?
Everyone has to sign up for health care, but if you already have health care, you've satisfied the mandate. So municipal workers are all in a health plan. Every employee in the City of New London, whether you work for the school department or the city, is now actually a part of the Connecticut Health Partnership Plan. We've partnered with the state to actually lower our health care costs and get better preventative care provided by state insurance. That happened last June. So that's actually something that saves the city about $30,000 a year. It's not a lot, but it's something. Hey, everything adds up. It frees up our own health care reserve account because we were self-insured, which is about $1 million, which will go back into the school and also into replacing the city's reserves. And everyone is covered, and they now have preventative care covered. So every municipal worker should have health insurance. They certainly do in New London. And by having health insurance, they've satisfied the Affordable Care Act. Because the way it works is you're mandated to have it, and you can, if you don't have it, you can go on the exchanges and get it. If you're below a certain income level, you can qualify for subsidies. But if you don't have it and you don't go get it, then you pay a tax. And when you pay your taxes next year, you get a tax penalty. So you can either get the insurance, or if you have insurance, you're already all set. If you're below a certain income, you can get subsidized insurance. But if you don't want insurance, you don't get insurance, then you pay a tax. That's effectively how the system works. And as I say, it's not the one I would have designed, but it is what it is.
Well, if I understand you correct then, if a person is in a group, then they don't have to go sign up
Correct.
at the exchange.
Correct.
Because they've already got their
You've already got insurance.
health insurance.
That's correct.
Well, I understood it differently, but I'm glad you straightened me out.
No. It's
Okay, thank
it's
you,
only
sir.
for the people who don't have insurance to get them insured.
I see. Okay.
Good. And the idea of that is, by the way, and the reason why I'm in favor of universal single-payer health insurance is because if everybody's insured, the way insurance works, fundamentally, the way it works, is that if everybody's in the risk pool, if everybody's insured, it's cheaper for everyone. If some people aren't insured, then it costs more, because it's the same thing with automobile insurance. It's why we mandate that everyone have car insurance. Because if you get in an accident without insurance, it costs the system more, it costs the government more, it costs the victim more, and so on and so forth. And it costs you more. You lose your car, you can't get your car replaced, so on and so forth. So having everyone insured lowers costs overall, and in the healthcare industry would lower healthcare costs overall.
Well,
but the easiest way to do that.
With you there.
What's
because,
that?
I too feel that it should be a one-payer system where the government just give everybody insurance, the uninsured and so forth. It would save a lot of problems, I think.
It's cheaper too. The thing
It would
that
be
if you
cheaper because you got more people in the program. Well, anyway, thanks a lot. It straightened me out.
You got it. All right. And
Okay.
I'll tell people too, if you think about it, people get very afraid of the idea of universal single payer, but Medicare is a universal
That's a single payer, that's right.
If you're over a certain age, you get government health insurance.
Exactly.
It's just for people who are too young, make too much money, and then you don't qualify, and then you have to get private insurance. But the private insurance is much more expensive. If you're in a progressive income tax, which is the income tax system that we have in the United States, you pay based upon your ability to pay. So if you're a high-income person, you pay more in taxes. You're low-income, you pay less. But if you pay your federal taxes and then you get an insurance card, I guarantee to any middle-class American, because it's been proven over and over and over again by every economist that's ever looked at it, if you pay into taxes, even if your taxes go up, but you get health insurance, the amount that you're paying more in taxes is going to be far less than the amount that you're paying now for private insurance or to not have insurance at all. The number one cause of bankruptcies in the United States is people not having health insurance. They get sick, they lose their house.
Oh, yeah, one sickness will send you to the cleaners.
What was that?
I say one sickness will send you to the cleaners.
That's
They'll
right.
wipe you right out.
It wipes people right out. So if we had universal health insurance paid for through progressive income taxation, everybody would be insured. Everyone, particularly people in the middle class and in the lower working class, would save money. I mean, most people go out and you see what comes out of, say, I'm on my partner's insurance. I have been for years. I didn't take city insurance because I'm already covered under his plan. The plans were comparable, didn't matter. So I'm on his insurance. I see every 2 weeks what comes out of his paycheck to pay for his insurance, and I assure you, universal single payer would be a lot less. We'd get a couple $100 more a month because we had government insurance, not private insurance. So that's really the way to go, but the insurance companies killed that, because obviously they would stand to lose billions upon billions of dollars. You know, in the end, and I've got to start wrapping up because I guess I got 4 minutes left, so I'll say this. In the end, if you want to know why a rational idea, why a logical idea is not working in government, it's probably because somebody who makes an awful lot of money is going to lose some of that money if this rational thing passes. And I'll give you another example, a different example. In the wake of the Newtown tragedy, the gun control debate in the United States was reignited. Now, I don't care what you think about gun control one way or the other when it comes to issues like magazine clips, assault weapons bans, permitting processes, and so forth. But one of the things that almost everybody agrees on, and I'm talking 90% of NRA members agree on, is that we should have universal background checks when you buy a weapon to make sure instantaneously with computers, which we can easily do, that if you're a felon, if you're a violent criminal, if you've got a history of domestic violence, if you've got a history of mental illness, that you should not be able to buy a firearm. Common sense. Everybody agrees. It was filibustered, not voted down, filibustered in the United States Senate. And the single, solitary, sole reason why that happened is that the NRA killed it, not because they're representing the 90% of their members who agree on it, but they killed it because 40% of the gun sales in the United States occur in gun shows, private sales, etc. And gun manufacturers, the gun companies, stood to lose hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in business, in profits, if that law passed. So
it comes right down to what you said, money talks, I guess.
So they fund the NRA is the lobbying group. The NRA will say if you vote on this, it's a scored vote. So if you're a member of Congress and you vote no, we're going to tell everyone in your district that you're against gun owners. Even if you're a gun owner who's an NRA member who's against every kind of gun control but supported background checks, we're going to make sure that you get voted out in your home district. So people voted no, and it died. But it died because money talked. And with the medical insurance debate, it's the same thing. The private insurance companies were okay with a private insurance mandate because that makes them richer. They were not okay with single payer because that made them poorer and made you richer. But I personally believe that we should have policies that grow the middle class, help working people, not continue to funnel money up to the top where we have the biggest growth in income disparity in the world here in the United States and the industrialized world, and hopefully we'll reverse that soon. Thank you for tuning in. See you next week.